We're going to start Chelik Beis of the Kovetz. Chelik Beis is 4 sichos that explain the concepts, 4 different concepts of Achdus Yisroel v'mechad Shorsham, the Achdus of Yidden v'mechad their Sheinish. In last Chelik we spoke about Beikar, how the Achdus of Yidden plays out practically, Mitzad Yidden, how Yidden Mitzad Atzma are able to connect to each other. Like we explained the concept of that Achdus Yisroel is the outcome of Achdus Yisroel. Achdus Yisroel is the outcome of Yidden B'etzem one. That's only in the Yid's Aveda down here. We explain 3 different levels of how Yidden down here are connected. In this chelik we're going to focus on 4 different aspects of how Yidden are connected mitzad their sheidish l'mayla, and that's how Yidden l'mata, the Yidden down here are able to have achdus in their day-to-day lives. In other words, the achdus of Yidden, the way it plays out practically is the tezah is the outcome of the achdus mitzad their sheidish. So last time we focused on 3 different ways the sheidish plays out in the Achdus Papel and the Achdus, the way Yidden are connected together. And in this Kovetz, in this chelik, we're going to focus on 4 different levels of the sheidish of Yidden being connected, or 4 different levels of how Yidden are Achdus mitzad the Eibush, looking at Yidden, mitzad the sheidish of Yidden, and how that plays out in Yidden's Aveda. So the first sikha is a sikha from Parshas Yisroel, Chelik Chaf Aleph. It's the first sikha of Parshas Yisroel. It's in the pasuk of Vayichan Shem Yisrael Neged Ahar. Before Matan Torah, it says that Yidden camped in front of our Sinai Neged Ahar, in front of the mountain. And now the pasuk doesn't say Vayachanu and they camped. The pasuk says Vayichan and they camped Loshen Yachid in a singular term. Rashi on the pasuk brings down the reason why the pasuk says Vayichan Shem Yisrael Neged Ahar, that the Yidden camped in a singular term, is because when Yidden became before Matan Torah, they were Ki'ish Echad B'Leiv Echad. They were like one person with one heart, which means Yidden were completely b'achdus, Yidden were united together. But Rashi continues, all the other time Yidden camped were with machlekes. So we see over here that there's a concept of Vayichan is Loshen Yachid, and that alludes to the concept of Ki'ish Echad B'Leiv Echad, that the Yidden were one person with one heart. Now when Torah describes Yidden as a nation, or even we're going to see soon, even other nations, Mitzrayim, sometimes Torah describes it in a singular term, in Lashon Yachid, and sometimes it says in plural, Lashon Rabim. And the general the differentiation between these two, when Torah calls something Lashon Yachid, and when Torah calls something Lashon Rabim, even though B'Pashtos, a nation should always be called Lashon Rabim. So the basic differentiation is that when Torah is describing a pu'ula that people are doing, an action that people are doing, or something that happened, so then everyone is equal in that pu'ula, everyone is equal in that action. For example, when Torah says that the Yidden saw Vayad Ha'am, Vayad Yisrael Siyad Agdela, Yidden saw Siyad Agdela. So when Yidden see something, when a nation sees something, there's no differentiation in how they see it. The concept that they see is the same. They might have different ways of understanding it, but that which they saw it is the same. As opposed to when it continues to saying Vayaminu, that they believed that together with not only they saw Siyad Agdela, but they believed by Minu B'Hashem, and they believed Hashem and Mesha Avdei. So when it comes to belief, when it comes to emunah, so there's the common dargos, there's different levels of how many each yid has their ofen of emunah. So then Torah describes it as plural, lashon rabim. So when the nation, when the people are doing something, are doing an action, so then it's lashon yachid. But when it comes to feeling something, when it comes to seichel amidis or emunah, every single person is separated. So the fisa we have to understand, according to what we explained just now, that when Torah wants to describe the feelings, the seichel amidis of people together, Torah doesn't say lashon yachid, Torah says lashon rabim. Just like it says, "Vayaminu b'Hashem," and they believe in the Eibush, because the concept of the belief of emunah is each person separate, or each person differently. So why, when it comes to Vayichan Shem Yisrael Neged Ahar, that when Yidden came to the mountain of Har Sinai to Makabel the Torah says Vayichan lashon yachid. Each Yid had their own preparation from Matan Torah. There were different levels of Yidden, starting from Moshe, and the Shivim Skenim, and there's a lot of different dargos in Yidden and their preparation for Matan Torah. All Yidden were preparing to Matan Torah. Maybe all Yidden were coming to Matan Torah, but the Gabi the preparation, which were Pashas, the Torah is trying to be Madgish, Vayichan Shem Yisrael Neged Ahar, the preparation for Matan Torah, Yidden were separated. So why does it say Vayichan lashon yachid? And so the answer to the question, Rashi sticks in the word Vayichan Shem Yisroel Neged Ahar, in order to explain that Rashi doesn't only put in the words that Vayichan Sham, that Yidden were there, meaning the way that they camped was in a way of Vayichan Sham, that they camped Kishach B'lei V'echad. Rashi sticks in Vayichan Sham Yisroel, the Yidden were there Kishach B'lei V'echad. And by that, Rashi is coming to explain how, Rashi is coming to explain the type of how Yidden were Kishach B'lei V'echad, how Yidden were able to be Kishach B'lei V'echad because they were Yisroel. The Rebbe explains that the concept of the Yidden being Achdus when they came to Matan Torah wasn't because of their that they were Achdus and they agreed together to Mekabel Torah and they were neged the har. That which they were Achdus when they came to Mekabel Torah is because they were Yisrael, which means their Achdus was defined by them being Yisrael, that all Yidden, their Ish Echad, that which they were one person, was because they all felt how they were Yisrael. They all felt they were a Yid. And Mitzad Yidden, all Yidden are the same. Mitzad the Sherish of Yidden. And therefore, they were Kish Echad. And they felt like one person. Then we have the next step, that Kish Echad didn't only stay by Yidden feeding the one person, but that affected also in the Ratzin to Mekabel Torah. That they had the same Ratzin, Belev Echad, that in Belev Echad they felt united together, they felt Ba'achtas, even Belev, even in the Ratzin Mekabel Torah, that expressed itself in that. So this concept that in general Achdus, usually when we say people are being united, they be united for a specific mission. Over here we're saying the Yidden weren't united for a mission. That which they were united was the tezua, was the outcome of them being Yisroel, Yisroel. They felt Achdus because they're one people, not because they're doing something, not because of something that expresses itself into action, but because they're one people. B'etzem. Now, and that happens specifically when they came to Matan Torah. Now, through that, the Rebbe explains, we find a similar concept of a people doing something by Achdus. We find it by Mitzrayim. It says in Mitzrayim running after Yidden, the Mitzrim running after Yidden. When the Yidden came out of Mitzrayim, so the pasuk brings down Mitzrayim Netzeh Achrei, and the Torah describes when the Mitzrim ran after the Yidden, they were Lashon Yachid. And Rashi brings down almost the same Lashon, that they were B'lei V'echad Kish Echad, that with one heart, like one person. So when it comes to the Yidden, the Torah describes it Kish Echad B'lei V'echad. They were one person with one heart. When it comes to the Mitzrim, it describes Fakert, that they were B'lei V'echad with one heart, Kish Echad, for one person, like one person. And the difference between them is because by the Mitzrim, that which united them, they were united for one mission. Their mission was to run after Yidden. And that's why we describe them Belev Echad. That which Torah describes it as the Mitzrim, as Lashon Yachid, because they had one heart, they had one intention. Belev Echad, the one intention was to harm the Yidden. Now that intention unified them, that intention to harm the Yidden was able to unite them, that they felt like one person. But that which they felt like one person was the tezua, wasn't because of who they were, wasn't because they were a nation, one nation. Them being one nation was the outcome of them chasing Yidden. So therefore, it first says Belev Echad, and then it says Kish Echad. When the Yidden were Vayichan Sham Yisrael neged the har, like we just explained, the Achdus wasn't the outcome of their emotions. The Achdus wasn't an outcome of their excitement about Matan Torah. The Achdus was the tezua, direct outcome of who they are as Yidden. So therefore, it first says Ki Ish Echad, that what was Mudish in the Achdus? What was Mudish in the Achdus was Ki Ish Echad, that they're one person. Because that's what the Taka were. They felt like one person. Mitzad, that which they Yisrael, they attack one person, and that had an effect on the Seichel Aminis. That had an effect also Belev Echad. So this is how the pasuk describes the two different types of Achdus. The way the pasuk describes the Achdus by Yidden, and the pasuk describes the Achdus by going by Mitzrayim. Now the Rebbe goes a step further in Sif Yud, and the Rebbe explains that it's not only that the way the Achdus happened practically was different, but there's an essential difference between the Achdus of Yidden and the Achdus of Goyim. That there's a certain level of Achdus that Goyim are able to reach, and then there's Achdus that specifically unites Yidden together that Goyim aren't able to reach. Why not? The Eibishter created the world that everything is defined by definitions. Part of Elam Hazeh is that it's Mugdin as Man and Mokim. Part of Siddish Talshus in general is that there's a concept of Man, there's a concept of Mokim. Every single thing in the world is defined by either time or space. Which means that Ba'etzem, every single thing is mechulik, every single thing is separated. There's no such thing as unity in the world. because the world's definition is that each concept, each nivra, has their own definition. And this comes already from Seder Shtalshlos, but the way it comes down to Elmazi is that each nivra feels his definition very strongly. And even when he unites with another nivra, even when he unites with something else, it's only to be meisif in his own definition. It's only to be meisif in his own aspects. The dogma, when you have two different people doing something together, so each one is Eilam Mali, each one has his own seichon, his own midas, and the same shavis, same partzofeim shavis. The Eibusher created each person with a separate definition, which makes him unique, and suddenly they're able to unite together. Why are they able to unite together? So Pashas, the way they're able to unite together is, let's say, two friends are able to unite together because each friend likes a different maila that the other friend has, and that unites them together. Meaning there's always a common denominator that's uniting them together. So that's they're not connecting to each other; they're connecting to the concept that's uniting them together, which in general is described by Ava Tluy B'Davar, that the Ava is totally something else. So the Davar doesn't only have to mean that the Asher likes a Ani because Ani likes a Asher because he wants money from him. But that, if you go higher and higher, every relation, every connection of two things is based on that they share something together, that they help each other out. That's the mila of you could say childhood friends who grew up in school together or from a young age. That what connects them is pshitis. What connects them is nothing that connects them. They don't share anything in common, and they don't. The friendship isn't based on anything else. The friendship is based on who they are. But at the end of the day, even that is far totally that they grew up in the same place. They share the same values, the same inyan that they grew up together. And when they are going to grow up and reunite, they're going to talk about the days of growing up. In other words, every single connection that two nivraim have to be there for a specific point. Because nivraim by definitions are in the same shabbos and partzofeim shabbos. Nivraim by definitions are separate beings. So the concept of Achdus is heipach and nivraim. The concept of Achdus is heipach of the nekuda b'olam hazeh. And not only that, it's heipach b'dakos seder shtalshos. Seder shtalshos is also made in a way that there's 7 midas. Not only that, there's seichel and then there's midas. That seichel and midas are defined by two hafrizdike definitions, and that which they're able to connect each other is because the Eibusher created that seichel has a midas shebe seichel, and midas has a union of seichel and midas. Meaning each there has to be a concept of iskalos, if not they'll never be able to connect each other, because the definition of each nivra, the definition of each midah, the definition of giloyim is that they're separated in the same shabbos. So that's in general ilm hazeh. How is there able to be a concept of Achdus in the world? How is there able to be a concept of a nivra with in the same Shabbos, in partzofeim Shabbos, and a nivra being nitzvos in his vav tzavis and still be mugbal and be mugbal in zman and makim, etc.? How can he reach a concept of Achdus? The only way a nivra can reach a concept of Achdus is that he has something which is higher than nivra. He has a concept which is higher than nivra, which is a lakus which is higher than nivra. Since the Eibusher is Hashem Echad, the Eibusher, as opposed to nivra, which is defined by having definitions, the Eibusher is pumfakeret. The Eibusher is Hashem Echad. The Eibusher is defined by not having definitions. The Eibusher is defined by no chilukim, by being in the union of Achdus. The only way that a nivra is able to be b'Achdus, then way a nivra is able to connect to another nivra in a way that is truly b'Achdus is only without Hashem Echad. So that's the first thing. In order for nivraim to have the union of Achdus, they have to have the concept of a lakus which is higher than nivraim. Now, how is a lakus which is higher than nivraim nimshach in Welt? If the world is from a malakam, the world is from a dagger of a lakus which is shaykh to the world, how is in the world going to be nimshach a dagger of a lakus which is higher than the world? So there's two concepts the Eibusher created that their tafkid is to mamshach a lakus higher than nivraim. And not only that, the world was created for these two concepts. What are these two concepts? Like Rashi says, Torah and Yisrael. Torah and Yidden both have the same concepts of bringing a lakus, which is higher than Nivraim, down into Nivraim. Torah does it by bringing Dvar Avai into the world. And Yidden do that by being a Chedek Lekam Mimam Mamash in Neshama B'Guf. So a Yid is the one who's able to bring a concept of a lakus into the world. In other words, a Yid is able to make the concept of Achdus In Elam Hazeh. And that's why true Achdus is Shaykh on by Yidden. And in Yidden itself, there's different daggers than the Neshama. Even though the Neshama in general is the concept is connected to Hashem Echad, there's different ways the way the Neshama is connected to Hashem Echad. You have Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, which are parts of the Neshama that are Kaviyachal defined in the Neshama itself. And then you have Chaya, and then you have the highest is Yechidah. Besides Yechidah Sheba Nefesh, Yechidah Liyachtiv, Yechidah is connected to the Eibush higher than any definitions. And since Yechidah is connected to the Eibush higher than any definitions, the only true way of a Neshama being Ba'achdus with another Nivra is that he derheres the way he is Mitzad Yechidah Sheba Nefesh. And if he derheres the way he is Mitzad Yechidah Sheba Nefesh, he derheres that he's Ba'atzim undefined. He doesn't have any definitions. He's connected to Hashem Echad, which is higher than any definitions. And that's why true Achdus is only Shaykh by Yidden because they have the concept of Yechidah Sheba Nefesh. True Achdus is only Shaykh by Yidden because they have a concept of Elokus, which is completely higher than any definitions, higher than any Nivra. So when Yidden came out of Mitzrayim, and they became, and then by them was Nizgal Yechidah Sheba Nefesh. So was Nizgal Yechidah Sheba Nefesh they were able to have when they came to Matan Torah Ki Ish Echad B'Leiv Echad, that they were able to truly feel Ki Ish Echad. They were able to truly feel Ba'achdus Mitzad Yechidah Sheba Nefesh. And not only that, this Nukud Sayadus, this Nukud of Achdus, that all Yidden were B'atzim the same, expressed itself also in the Ratzon of Matan Torah, expressed itself also in the feeling of B'Leiv Echad. That this had an effect on their Ratzon for Matan Torah. If the concept of Achdus is only Shaykh by Yidden, how do we find that by Mitzrim they had some sort of concept of Achdus? For that Mitzrim it says, it doesn't only say that they were B'Leiv Echad, it doesn't only say that they had a connection mitzad the goal, but it says that the connection was Pel Ki Ish Echad, that they taka felt one. If the concept of Achdus is Shaykh to Yechidah Sheba Nefesh, how can we say that Mitzrim had the concept of Ki Ish Echad? So the Rebbe explains that since the Eibishter wanted there should be a concept of Bchira, that the Yid should be able to choose right from wrong, the Eibishter made the Eibishter made that a Klippa should have a presence just like anything in Kedusha. So just like true Achdus is Shaykh in Kedusha, the Eibishter made Zel Mazeh a concept of Achdus also by the Mitzrim, even though it's in a different Eifen. Like you said before, that by the Yidden the Achdus was a tezwa of who they were. As opposed to by the Mitzrim, who they were was determined by their mission. So in other words, the mission determined who they were. The mission, B'Leiv Echad, made them into Ki Ish Echad. As opposed to by Yidden was Punkt Fakert. By Yidden was Ki Ish Echad, and that made them into B'Leiv Echad. But as far there's the union of Achdus over there. That comes from Mezelu Mozed. The Eibishter made a concept of Achdus also by Goyim. This concept of Achdus and Klippa, we see, even though usually we say the Klippa is the union of Hepech Hashem Echad, Klippa is always benefit, etc. But there is a concept that by Klippa is also Mezelu Mozed. Also, there's a concept of Achdus also by Dlu Mozed, and we see this also in Halacha. There's a concept of Iran Nidachas. If the whole city serves, if the rave of the city serves of it, the whole city has to be destroyed. Not only the whole city has to be destroyed, but even the people who didn't serve Avodah Zarah, like the Nashim and the Ktanim, and even the money of the tzaddikim of the city who didn't serve Avodah Zarah, the money also has to be destroyed. So the shaila is, why do we destroy also the money of the tzaddikim in that city? Why do we destroy also the women, the Nashim who didn't serve Avodah Zarah? So the answer is that by Yirei Dachas, the whole city becomes a tzibur. The whole city becomes, we don't look at the city as individuals, we look at the city as one full city, one community. And without one community, they're all chayv and avodah zarah together. So the shaila is, we just explained how the concept of Achdus is only shaykh by Kedusha. The concept of Achdus is a direct tezwa of Yechidah. It's a direct tezwa of being connected to the Eibishter, which is higher than definitions. So how can the concept of Achdus express itself also by avodah zarah? How can you have a city which is undefined? In other words, how can you have a city which is, we take away the definitions of the city. We don't look at them as Yechidim, defined Yechidim. We look at them as one tzibur. How do we say that when it gets Avodah Zarah? Avodah Zarah is Hepech Achdus. So the answer is that Mitzad Bchira, Mitzad the Eibishter gave Yidden the Kerech HaBchira, the Kerech to go against their nature, to go against their definitions. So Mitzad Bchira, the Eibishter could also make that the Yid could schlep arayin, the Yid could pull his Achdus that he has Mitzad Hashem Echad and use that also for Klippa. So that's the general concept, the first Sikha, the general concept that by the Achdus of Yidden is something which, it's not only that Yidden have one shadish, it's not only that by Yid, you have Avechel Lukulana and we all come from one Chodesh. In order to the that we all come from one Chodesh, we have to be connected to Hashem Echad. You have to be connected to something which is higher than Nivroim. And that's the Chiddush of the Achdus of Yidden. That the Achdus of Yidden is that they're able to deher in Elam Hazeh, which is defined by Chilukim, which is defined by in the same Shavis. They're still connected to Hashem Echad. Goy Echad Baretz, they're Goy Echad in Aretz, and they're still connected to Hashem Echad. And that's why true Achdus is Shaykh only by Yidden. By Goyim, or by any other object in the world, the concept of Achdus is only a chitzenizik thing. Even if you're going to have a real deep connection between two Goyim, at the end of the day, it's only going to be to help each other out in their chilukim. By Yidden, their Achdus is a tezah of being really bad someone, because they're able to feel it down here in the Maz. So that's the first Sicha of this Chelik. The next Sicha is the Sicha from Pashas Shmois Chelik Lamed Aleph. And on this Sicha, the Rebbe Mechadish, not only is Achdus, the Achdus of Yidden, something which is true, like we explained in the first Chelik, or something which is negea to Yidden Hashem, but it's something which defines Yidden as a people. In other words, that which makes Yidden as a people is because they're Achdus. What does that mean? The Rebbe starts explaining that Moshe Rabbeinu, when he saw Dasan Aviram Snitchanim, that he killed the Mitzri, it says in Medrash that Moshe Rabbeinu said that Yidden have Lashon Hara, and if you didn't have Lashon Hara between them, how they're going to be roy for the Gula? So the question is that Yidden had a lot of other Avedas that they did. We say that Yidden were the Aveda Zara, and that which the Aveda Zara didn't stop the Eibush taking them out of Mitzrayim. We madrash, even though they said Aveda Zara, we still take them out of Mitzrayim. So if the Eibush is not looking at them serving Aveda Zara, why Lashon Hara is something which is negea to Yetzias Mitzrayim? Why is Lashon Hara something which, because of that, Yidden won't come to Mitzrayim? So it's Yedua that Yidden became a nation. Yidden became Am Yisrael. Yidden were born as a nation when they came out of Mitzrayim. Like it's brought down in Nevuos Yecheskel, that the latest Am Yisrael, the Yidden being born as a nation, the making of Am Yisrael, happened when they came to Mitzrayim. The Shaila is, Yidden were before Yidden came out of Mitzrayim, there was also a concept of a nation. Avraham Avinu had already started making a whole movement that knows the Eibishter, and then you had Shivim Nefesh that came down to Mitzrayim, Yaakov, and all the Shvatim. What defined Yidden as a nation before Yetzias Mitzrayim, and why was Yetzias Mitzrayim and Leidas Am Yisrael? So to explain this, the Rebbe explains a very fundamental difference between a country, a nation, in the world's terms, and Yidden. Why that the definition of a country, the definition of a nation is different than what makes Yidden as Yidden. So Pashtos, the way a country works, or the way a nation works, especially nowadays, is there's two main points that make the nation into a nation. Number one, the nation is made by themselves. The nation is made by themselves means that the nation is accumulated by people who decide to make a nation. The nation doesn't come by itself. The nation has to be made. And number two, which is what defines the nation. What defines the nation is that they have an idea. They have an ideology that is the ideology of the nation. That is the mentality of the nation. And that's what unites the nation. If someone doesn't think like that, then he's not part of the nation. If someone doesn't believe lahavdil in American values, then he's not an American. Being an American b'shteit in that he believes in specific inyanim that unites the American people. And every nation is like that. Every nation has their own constitution. Every nation has their own inyanim that unites them as a nation. That makes them as a people. So number one, it's the nation is made by people being together. The nation is made by is man-made. And number two, it's the nation has a ideology which is which to be part of the nation you have to have the ideology. That is the Hagdara of the nation. And Kaviyachal, the Yidden had the same thing. Lahavdil Yidden had the same thing before Matan Torah. Before Matan Torah, the Rambam writes that Avraham started the movement of Yidden, and Yitzchak and Yaakov and then the Shvatim, until it became V'nasis Beilim Umoshi Yidasas Hashem. They became a nation that knows the Eibishter. It became a nation that is connected and knows the Eibishter. So what defined Am Yisrael before Yetzias Mitzrayim? What defined Am Yisrael was that the number one it was made by Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, And number two, that there was an ideology to Klal Yisrael. It was an ideology to Am Yisrael, which was the concept of Yudas Hashem. And anyone who's not Yudas Hashem, then he's not part of the nation. So the second, let's say the ideology goes away, the mentality of the nation goes away, then the nation falls apart. And we can say lahavdol, that's what happens in all the past nations that fell apart. Not only they were destroyed by Gashmias, but the whole ideology went away. And if the ideology goes away, then there's nothing that continues the nation. So that's regarding B'chalal, a nation in Ilam Hazeh. Comes Yitzias Mitzrayim. Yitzias Mitzrayim. It says that the Yidden chose Bachar Hashem Yisrael and Nachla. That the Eibishter chose the Yidden to be his nation. The Eibishter chose the Yidden. Now the concept of Bechira has 2 points which are completely opposite of the previous 2 points. Number one, Bechira comes from the person who chooses. That he chooses something. Not that the chosen thing did anything to be chosen, but the person who chooses the object, he's choosing Method he wants to choose it. And number two, that the way he chose the Yidden to be a nation is the Nachla. There should be an inheritance, there should be his people. And Mitzad, these 2 points, there can never be a hefsek, there can never be a discontinuation to Am Yisrael. Because if Klal Yisrael, if Am Yisrael is defined by a ideology, and it's man-made, and you have to have this ideology in order to be part of the nation. So the second you don't have this ideology, or the second, the Orcha Yamim L'Yisrael Mitzrayim, and the second that the ideology gets faded away through Arichas Hagalos or whatever it is, so the nation falls apart. But if what is Magda the nation? What makes the people? By the Eibishter choosing it, Bachar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that the Eibishter chose it mitzad b'chira, and the way he chose it is that it should be a b'chira that should never stop, because he says it's never going to stop, because he wants the Yidden to be a nachla. So the Yidden, the concept of Am Yisrael was redefined. The concept of Am Yisrael was redefined as a nation which is chosen by the Eibishter. Not that it has an ideology, but it's chosen by the Eibishter. That defines Am Yisrael. Now that also explains why the Eibishter could have taken Yidden Am Mitzrayim even though they served Avodah Zarah. Because Bechira means that the Eibishter is choosing Yidden not because of milas that they have, and not because of any advantages that they have, but because he's choosing them. Like Chassidus explains the milas of Bechira, we're going into it now. And even though Yidden serve Avodah Zarah, this is not enough to take away the Eibishter's Bechira. And that's why the Eibishter took Mitchila Avodah Zarah, that the Yidden served Avodah Zarah, and the Eibishter still took them out Mitzrayim. But the second it comes to Lashon Hara is an Aveda that mitzad that Moshe Rabbeinu had Sakadaitach, that Yidden weren't going to be able to come to Mitzrayim Lashon Hara. Why? Because Lashon Hara has something special about it that it doesn't have by other Avedas. Lashon Hara has 3 details in Lashon Hara. Number one, he's damaging his friend, which is a bad thing. And number two, he's finding something bad in his friend, which is also a bad thing. Well, these 2 things are a problem with the person who's speaking Lashon Hara. That he's damaging someone, and he's finding a bad aspect in someone. These 2 pratim are pratim is the Masapet, the person who's speaking Lashon Hara. And mitzad that Yidden could speak Lashon Hara and still come out of Mitzrayim. Because again, Bechira means I don't look at the advantage or disadvantages of the person. I look at the Beicha. The Beicha is choosing them. But Lashon Hara has a third prat which isn't connected to any other Aveda. Lashon Hara is that through a person speaking Lashon Hara, he causes Piru the Machlekes. He causes that there should be a separation in Am Yisrael. Now, that which Lashon Hara causes there should be a separation in Am Yisrael, that is a stira to the Eibishter's Bechira in Yidden. Why? Because Bechira means that the Eibishter is choosing Yidden not mitzad the nimailins that they have, mitzad who they are, not for what they do. So since Bechira means he's choosing the Yidden not for an advantage that they have, but because of who they are, which means as Am Yisrael, he's choosing them as a nation. So even though it's nothing to do with their advantages, but he's still choosing something. He's choosing an object, the cheft of Klal Yisrael. The dogma, just like a person chooses an object, and it's the Ma'alim Tam Vadas, he makes a decision which is the Ma'alim Tam Vadas. So just because of the Ma'alim Tam Vadas, if it doesn't mean that if you give him another object, he'll take it. He's not looking at the advantages, and he's not looking at the Ma'alis or the Chesreinis. But But at the end of the day, this is not the object that he chose. It's a different chefta, it's a different object. So when the Eibster chose Yidden as a nation, he chose Yidden as one nation, as am echad, as one klal, as one people. Now the second that is piru the machlekes, so the second is piru, the second is separation with Yidden. So this is not the chefta the Eibster chose. This is not there's missing in the object that the Eibster chose. The Eibster chose a full object, and the second that object is taken apart, then it's not. Then this is not the object the Eibster chose. So Mele, this is why Moshe Rabbeinu was scared of lashon hara, because all of the averes have to do with the milas and chesenos of Yidden, the advantages and disadvantages of what Yidden do, and bechira has nothing to do with what the person does or any milas that they have. It's got to do with who they are. But lashon hara is able to be again who Yidden are, because the Eibster chose Yidden as a nation, as a am echad, and the second is piru machlekes, so that goes away. That goes away. So what you see from the Sicha is a different approach to the Achdus of Yidden. On the previous Sicha, we explained that Yidden are one mitzad their being, mitzad their sheirish of their one. Here we're saying a different word. Here we're saying Yidden are one mitzad the way the Eibster chose them is they have to be one. They made one mitzad the Eibster's bchira. They made a nation mitzad the Eibster's bchira, and therefore the concept of Achdus Yisroel isn't only something which is negea to Yid's aveda, or it's negea that Yid knows his true milas through connecting to another Yid, and it's his sheirish, and it's not only mitzad Avos Yisrael. The concept of Achdus Yisroel is negea to the atzam being of Yidden. When we say Am Yisrael, we mean that there's a concept of Achdus over there. If not, then there's no. If there's no other thing that unites us. If Yidden were connected by ideology, so then or mentality, so then what unites us is the mentality. But the Eibster beferish made that Yidden aren't connected by the mentality. Yidden are connected with the bchira. So if Yidden are connected with the bchira, so there has to be Achdus. Because if not, this is not the object the Eibster chose. So those are two in Yonim, the Achdus Yidden have with each other, that mitzad the sheirish they're connected to each other. Either mitzad the sheirish or mitzad the bchira, the Eibster was berich them. The next two sichos are going to explain how this that Yidden are connected to the sheirish, how that affects the neshama down here, how that affects the neshama the way it comes ready into a guf and is separated than other Yidden. So the third sikh is the sikh from Parashat Tezvah, Chelik Lam Vav, where the Rebbe explains the machlekes of Rashi and the Rambam of how the Shvatim's name were spelled in the Avnei Shneim. It says in the pasuk, the Eibster said that we should put the names of the Shvatim in the Avnei Shneim. In what order should we put them? So it says Ketol Desam, the way they were born. Shisha Nesanim Lavin Hashenis Ketol Desam. They should put them the way they were born. Now, what does it mean they were Ketol Desam, the way they were born? So Rashi is Mefarish B'Pashtus that the way they were born means Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, etc. So the names of the Shvatim were put in a way in order. If you look at the Rambam writes that Ketol Desam doesn't mean the way they were born. Ketol Desam means the way they were born by their mother. Which means that we first write all the Shvatim that were born from Leah. Then we write all the Shvatim that were born from Bila, Zulpa, Rachel, etc. So the way they were born mitzad their mother. So that's machlekes and nigla how to put out the name of the Shvatim. So that explains what is this first machlekes. What are they arguing about? Rashi and the Rambam, if Ketol Desam means they were born, or Ketol Desam means the way of the mother. L'chayda, that which the Eibster said to write the names of the Shvatim on the Avnei Shneim is to bring out the Achdus of Yidden, the old part is like the Cheshen, was there to bring out Yidden all B'Achdus, so to the Avnei Shneim, was there to bring out Yidden all B'Achdus, they were all on one stone. So Mele, according to Rashi said Ketol Desam means to put them the way they were born. So it's Madish, they were all born, they were all part of one family, and therefore you write Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda. It's Madish that all the Shvatim were B'Achdus. But according to the Rambam, the Ketol Desam means to separate them according to the way they were born by their mother, which means we're making separations between Yidden. We're not writing the way they were born as one family. We're writing the way they were born with their mother. So why in the eighth grade would be madgish the way they're born mitzad their mother? So the Rebbe explains that Be'emes, even writing the way they come inside the mother brings out Achdus Yisroel. It brings out the unity of the Shvatim and then the unity of Yidden in general. Alamai brings out the unity in a different way. Just like in a person has two different details in the way a person is formed. The shreish of the person comes from the tippa sa'av, which is one tippa, one drop which is higher than its chalkos, and that drop comes from the father. and that job isn't able to be mischalik, and that job is nichlal. The whole person, from the highest parts of his body to the lowest parts of his body, for the seichel and the midas, everything is nichlal in that tipa. So, in other words, the person's fashion of where it's completely higher than his chalkos, higher than different aspects of his nefesh, or higher aspects of his body, is brought out from his father. His father gives the tipa, and that is the part of the person which is higher than his chalkos. Now, the tipa, the way it's formed in the mother's stomach in the 9 months of pregnancy, is that the mother, the Eibishter made, that in the mother's stomach has the ability to take this tipa and make it into a person full of different his chalkos and full of different aspects of his body. That this tipa could turn into seichel, this tipa could turn into midas, this tipa could turn into hands, feet, etc. So there's two things happening at the same time. There's the inyan of the tipa, which is a nekuda which is higher than his chalkos. In other words, the source of the child, the source of the person, is from something which is higher than his chalkos. On the other hand, this source doesn't stay something which is higher than his chalkos through the mother, through the tipa, through the bet noaim, and the 9 months of pregnancy. It's able to come into a person which the person has different aspects of it. So in general, the father represents the concept of the person the way he's b'sharshay. As opposed to the mother represents the concept of a person the way he's b'schalkas, the person the way he's formed into a body to function with different types of function in his body. So just like it begashmis, by the father represents the sherish and the mother represents the ischalkos, so too by the shvatim, when we say the shvatim was spelled out in a way that they were born, there's two ways of bringing out Achdus of Yidden. There's two ways of bringing out a Yidden were unified. The first way is, which is Rashi Shita, that mitzad the sherish of Yidden are all one. And since mitzad the sherish of Yidden are all one, that's the tachlis ha'achdus. That's the tachlis of unity. Yidden can have together mitzad the sherish, higher than his chalkos. But when Yidden are already come into a form, when Yidden come into a form, which means when Yidden the pashas when Yidden come down into Elam Hazeh, and there's an union of Roshechem, Shiftechem, Vashevim, Echem, Vaychit, V'tzecha, there's an union of his chalkos in Yidden, or like you said before in the Mash of the Shvatim, when the Shvatim aren't only connected to Yaakov, they also they come to union that they're separated by their mothers, so they have the same father, but they're separated by the mothers. So according to Rashi, since they're separated by the mothers, so that brings out a gira, and that brings out a problem with their Achdus. Even though they're part of the same family, at the end of the day, they're separated from each other. And since they're separated from each other, so that's a chesar. The tachlis ha'mayla is when you madgish the Achdus of Yidden the way they are mitzad ha'shenish. And that's Rashi Shita. The second Shita, which is the Shita of the Rambam holds that the tachlis of Achdus isn't when you have one concept which is higher than its chalkos. The tachlis of Achdus isn't when you have something which is higher than being separated and higher than a form. Because since that type of Achdus is higher than coming into a form, it's never felt in the form. It's never felt in the Ischalkos. The Achdus stays something which is abstract, which is higher than coming down into different forms of Yidden, different forms of Ischalkos. The Tachlis is when in the separation, when in each Yid is able to feel his tafkid, like we spoke about in last year. Each Yid is able to feel his tafkid, that in each part of Yidden are they able to feel how they're part of Klal Yisrael. And this, we spoke about three different Eifanim, how they're able to be mashpia in each other. Which that the tachlis is that the pratim, that the ischalkos itself should feel that it's high, that it's all connected. That's the tachlis of Achdus. Just like in the body, you have the way that the nefesh, which is higher than ischalkos, looks at the body. And the gabi that inyan, the gabi that the daiga of the nefesh, every single part of the body brings out the same part of the nefesh. Every single part of the body brings out the same concept that they're all part of one body. And there's no difference between the head and the foot, etc. But then you have the way the foot helps out the head, and the head helps out the foot. And like that prat, the haregel atzmin asareish is the regel. The foot feels that he needs the head, and the head knows that he needs the foot. So the head knows that he needs the foot. So therefore, in the head's part of being a true head, part of being a true chelek is that you need to come into Achdus. Part of being a true davar nifrad is that you have to come into Achdus. And that's according to the Rambam. That's the tachlis hamayla, and that's what the Rambam says that the way the Yidden were written on the Avnei Shem wasn't the way they were mitzad their father, mitzad the Yaakov. Wasn't the way they were mitzad they were born. Because that's madgish and mitzad Yaakov, the whole one. They were written dafke the way they were mitzad their mothers. Mitzad their mothers, they're separated. They're not all brothers mitzad their mothers, they're only brothers mitzad their father. On the other hand, they're still part of the same family. They're still part of the Achdus. And that's why the Rambam, they wrote that on on Avnei Shem. Then the Rebbe finishes off with a very interesting Likkutei, which is connected to the last Sikha we explained, that the concept of Achdus has to come from the Eibishter. The concept that which by Yidden is a concept of Achdus. In other words, that which by Yidden we're able to have, number one, that Asher Shabbatzim one, and we're able to feel that down here, is connected to that which we come from Hashem Echad, that we're connected to the Achdus Apshut of the Eibishter. So just like by the Achdus of Yidden, there's two dargis, there's two ways of connecting to each other. Number one, there's the Achdus Mitzad the Shadish, and then there's the Achdus Mitzad, the way the Achdus expresses itself down in his Chalkos. So to the guy by the Eibishter, there's two different pratim of the Achdus of the Eibishter. That which the Eibishter is unified, that which the Eibishter is echad, apashut, is brought out in two different ways. You have one concept which is called Likkutei Sichos, and Method Likkutei Sichos means that when the Eibishter is higher than Eilmis, the way the Eibishter lechatchila doesn't interact with Eilmis, it doesn't give it its tzitzis makom to Eilmis. And the gabi that the world is only there, the world doesn't have its tzitzis makom to Tzadatzmi. The world is only there to bring out the yichud of the Eibishter. Just like Bagashas, we have a nes. The concept of a miracle, and the concept of a nes is to break the mitzvahs of the world. What does it mean to break the mitzvahs of the world? To show how the world is not a mitzvahs. The world is completely bottled of the Eibishter. And nes comes from a darga Likkutei Sichos, and nes comes from a darga that the Eibishter doesn't interact with the world. The Eibishter breaks the world. Because l'gabe that darga, the world is eichatim, so the world is there to show how the world is bottled to Likkutei. That's the darga Likkutei Sichos. Then there comes the inyan of, so if a person is only on the level of Likkutei Sichos, the person only has the inyan of Achdus Hashem mitzad Likkutei Sichos, so the Achdus of the Eibishter is the way it's mitzad its shadish, kilo. It's the way mitzad the Likkutei, the way the Likkutei sees the world is that lechatchila is no mitzvahs which is separated from the Eibishter, and the whole mitzvahs of the world is by Achdus. There was never a separation to begin with. Then when the Yid comes down to Elam Hazeh, and the Yid does his Aveda b'pel mamash in Neshama B'guf, there comes a new Aveda of Yichud Tata, or connecting Likkutei Sichos and Yichud Tata. But the concept is that there comes a whole new darga of Likkutei, which is connected to Nivraim, a darga of Likkutei which does give it tzitzis makom to Nivraim. And with Gabi that darga, the tafkid is not to break Nivraim, but the Gabi that darga, the tafkid is to be miyach Nivraim the way they are, and make them a Likkutei in their form, in their shape and form. And the Gabi that's a tachas hakavana. Tachas hakavana is not that there should be a concept of breaking the veil to Magal Likkutei Sichos, but that Likkutei Sichos should come down into Yichud Tata. That in the Tata, in the world, Kameshahu, in a person's nefesh, starting in his seichel, he should understand the Likkutei, and in his midas he should understand the Likkutei. And in the world in general, the world Kameshahu shouldn't be broken to understand the Likkutei, but they should understand the Likkutei on his terms. That's the kavanah of Yichud Tata. And there's a mile in each one. The mile of Likkutei Sichos is that it's higher than its chalkos. The mile of Likkutei Sichos is that it doesn't get down into Elam Hazeh, it doesn't get down into giving a tzitzis makom to a tachtin, a tzitzis makom to something which is separated than Likkutei. So if you could say it's more pure, Mashenke legabe the mile of Likkutei Tata, or having an option of Likkutei Tata, of the neshama coming down into Elam Hazeh and connecting to Tata, the mile is that you can make a dirim tachtin. The mile is that you could in the tachtin. In something which is separate than Likkutei, so you can make that connected to Likkutei in his terms. And these two concepts in Likkutei of Likkutei Sichos and then having the option of Likkutei Tata also was also brought out in the Avnei Shem, because it's brought out in the Shach al Atera. The Shach writes that on each stone of the Avnei Shem had 25 asias, and the 25 asias on each stone. There's two reasons why what those two things that the 25 asias on each stone represent. The first thing is that it represents, the first pshat is that it represents Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. So you have one stone which represents Shema, which is a Krishma Shachris, the 25 aces of Shema Yisrael of Krishma Shachris, and the second one is Krishma Shal Arvis. But both represent the concept of Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. That's one pshat. The second pshat is that the 25 aces of one stone represents the pasuk of Shema Yisrael. And the second stone represents the 25 aces of Baruch Shem Kremachos Levad. So the guy by the first pshat only says that there's two differences in the pasuk of Shema Yisrael. One is to represent the concept of Shema Yisrael in Shachris, and the second is to represent the concept of Shema Yisrael in Krishma Shalarvis. But they're both there to bring the concept of Likkutei Sichos in Shachris and in Arvis. But they're both there to represent the concept of Likkutei Sichos. Then comes the second pshat. The second pshat brings in the pasuk of Baruch Shem Kremachos Levad, and we know that the pasuk of Shema Yisrael represents the concept of Likkutei Sichos, and the pasuk of Baruch Shem represents the concept of Likkutei Tata. So lay the second pshat, lay the first pshat in Madish the Achdus of Eden, or the Achdus of the Eibishter, the way it's mitzad the Shadish. Comes the second pshat, which brings in the concept of Likkutei Tata of Baruch Shem, which is there to bring out the mile of the Achdus of Dafka Yidden down here are more mochad in a way than they were Mitzad Sheinish. And we're going to speak about this in the Kudim more in the next chelik of the Kovetz, which is Achdus Yisroel, which is there to bring out how the Chalkos in Yidden isn't only something which isn't a contradiction to Achdus, but the Chalkos of Yidden is something which brings out the Achdus. The Achdus is through the Chalkos. So we had from this Sikha is that you have a concept of the mile of the Achdus of the Shorish of Yidden. Like we spoke about in the first Sikha, and even the Achdus Mitzad Bchira, that's also a mile Mitzad the Shorish of Yidden. Then comes the Achdus of the mile of Achdus where Yidden are found down here. And in a certain aspect, the Achdus that Yidden are able to achieve down here is more than they're able to achieve inside the Shorish, just like the Neshama in general. The mile the Neshama has down here is higher than, in a way, than its Shorish. So too, by the Achdus of a Yid down here is there to bring out the Achdus more than even more than its Mitzad Sheinish. The last sikh of this chelik is it brings out the same Likkutei as the sikh we just learned, that the Shvatim Mitzad Yaakov Avinu Mitzad the Sheinish are all one, and the chiddush of this sikh explains number one how they're all one Mitzad the Sheinish. Number two, which is the big the chiddush of this sikh, and explains how that affects isn't only a concept in Achdus of Yidden, but also affects the Aved of Yid and Bepel Mamish. We know that Yaakov gave each one of the 12 Shvatim, Yaakov gave them a bracha. Yehuda was compared to a lion, and Dam was compared to a snake. Each Shevet had their inyan, which that was their bracha that they got from Yaakov. Now the pasuk says that after Yaakov gave the bracha to each one, the bracha finishes off, Kol Eder Shifti Yisrael Shnei Mosav Zaysa Shetibu Lehem Aviyem Vayevarech Esam Isha Asher Kebechasam Ben Chayesam. The Torah repeats that Yaakov gave a bracha to all them together. So there's two inyanim in the bracha that Yaakov gave them. There's number one, each pratistic bracha that Yaakov gave them, that Yehud is a lion and Dan is a nachash and Binyamin is a zev. Each shevet had their inyan. But then there's a klausdik bracha that together with each shevet having their inyan, Yaakov gave a general bracha that the milas of all the other of each shevet should affect each shevet individually, which means that together with Yehuda being a lion and together with Binyamin being a zev, that's one bracha. Then there was another bracha that Yehuda should also have the milas of all the other shvatim, and Binyamin should also have the milas of all the other shvatim too. Every shevet should have the mila of all the other shvatim. So maybe the shaila is, if all the shvatim have the mila of each one, then what is the difference between the pratisdik bracha, the specific bracha that Yaakov gave each shevet, that's his inyan, especially in Neves Hashem, that's his inyan that he brings out. But then you tell me that each shevet is batsam kelom with everyone. So maybe each shevet has the milas of each one. So what's the point in having both brachas? Elamai, you must say that which each shevet has a pratisdik bracha, the specific bracha for each shevet, that was his inyan, that was his concept, and his hamshacha of each shevet. Yehuda was a lion and Dam was a nachash. Their inyan was their pratisdik bracha was their inyan, and anything they got from the other shvatim was a bonus. Anything they got from the other shvatim was something extra that they had. It was something extra on their ikedik inyan, and each shevet was mashbia their ikedik inyan to all the other shvatim. But in that itself, there's three efanim, there's three levels, there's three ways that the brachis of each shevet spilled over and affected the other shvatim. The first way is that each shevet was able to mashpia to the other shvatim the outcome of his bracha. For example, Yisachar and Zvulun. Yisachar was the inyan of Limud Torah, and Zvulun was the inyan of business. And both of these inyanim were, in general, two drachman of Avodas Hashem. Yisachar is the inyan of Torah, and then Zvulun is the inyan of dir b'tachtenim, of mitzvahs, etc. So each one has their mila and their mila, and if you could say their chisaron, the thing that their chisaron that they don't have. So each one, Yisachar helps Zvulun, and Zvulun helps Yisachar. Zvulun helped Yisachar by giving him money, and Yisachar helps Zvulun that the schus of Yisachar's Torah went to Zvulun. Now the first definition is that Zvulun gave Yisachar the outcome of his bracha. Zvulun was in business. The outcome of his bracha is that he had a lot of money. So the money was given to Yisachar. So Yisachar got the outcome of Zvulun's inyan. It doesn't mean that Yisachar himself was as if Yisachar was in business. Yisachar got the outcome of Zvulun's bracha, got the outcome of the business. And so it was the other way around, that Zvulun got the schar, or the outcome of Yisachar's learning. It doesn't mean that Zvulun, it's as if Zvulun paid for Yisachar to learn, it's as if Zvulun was learning himself. The outcome of Yisachar's learning went to Zvulun. The schus
Yisachar's learning and the schar of Yisachar's learning, that went to the Zvulun. But the etzem inyan of Limud Torah, for example, the concept of the milas of learning a Torah, how the Torah affects a person, of Nisrei Mamti, that a person gets elevated through learning a Torah. Ladavka, that Zvulun was able to feel. So that's the first inyan, how each one had their ikkedike inyan, and they mashpia the outcome of their ikkedike inyan to each shevet. That's one eifin, how the shvatim affected each other. The second eifin is, how you can explain this is a deeper eifin, that not only was each shevet was makabel the outcome of the other shevet's bracha, but because Yaakov Avinu said that they should all be connected, and that Dan should also have the midas of Yehuda, and Yehuda should also have the midas of Dan. It's as if Yehuda was Dan and Dan was Yehuda, which means that Yaakov Avinu was kill them, that each shevet should be makabel the bracha of the other one. That each shevet, he himself has a pratistic thing. It's taka not his Likkutei, but he has a prat in him which is taka like Yehuda, and he's taka like Dan. So the first definition is that it doesn't mean that each shevet was taka like Dan or taka like Yehuda. It just means that Yehuda had specific milas, and those milas were given over, the outcome of those milas were given over to each shevet. The second definition is even deeper, than not only that they got the milas of each shevet, but each shevet, mitzad in Yonei, was Kel and Zich, had a part of Yehuda inside of him, and had a part of Dan inside of him. So Enechanami gets that from Yehuda. Enechanami gets that mila because there's a concept of Yehuda and there's the Ikkedike Derech and Ritz Hashem which comes from Yehuda. But the way Yehuda was mashpia that to Dan was that they became part of Dan. It's as if it was Dan's inyan that he was like Yehuda. So these are two ways in the way that the Shvatim were mashpia on each other, that there's their Ikkedike inyan, that is their main purpose of each shevet, and then you have the way each shevet affects the other Shvatim, or is kaila all the other Shvatim. Then the Rebbe says the third inyan is that just like the specific detail, the specific aved of each shevet came from Yaakov, so that which Yehuda is a lion, and that which Dan is a nachash, that came from Yaakov. The same way, that which each shevet is kaila all the other Shvatim also came from Yaakov. Meaning it's not sure that he had to get it from the other Shvatim. Yaakov, gave two brachas. He gave one bracha, which is a specific bracha to each one, and then Yaakov gave a general bracha that each shevet should have a part of each other shevet inside of him because it comes from Yaakov. Now we have a shayla l'chayda. Each shevet had the fact that each shevet had their bracha, had their specific inyan, was because that shevet mitzad his sheresh was shaykh to that inyan. That which Yehuda was a lion, that which Yehuda had the inyan of Malchus, that came because Yehuda is Mushash and Malchus, and that which Zvulun had the inyan of Pragmatia was because Yehuda was Mushash in the inyan that shaykh to Pragmatia, and that which Yisach had the inyan of Limud is because Yisach was shaykh to that. So Mele, you tell me each shevet had their pratistic inyan. That's because of their shadish. But how can it be that each shevet is kelo from all the other shvatim if they don't have the same shadish as all the other shvatim? They don't have the same shadish. Yehuda didn't have the same shadish as Dan, and Dan didn't have the same shadish as Yehuda. So made of them makabelit from another shevet, made of them makabelit from some. That's one inyan. But to say that each shevet had in it, like we said the third shot before, had in part of his inyan was also that he was kelo from everyone else. How does that work? So the Rebbe says that which each shevet had their specific tafkid and their specific mitzad, their specific shedesh. That's all the way the shvatim already branched out into 12 different aspects, 12 different inyanim, 12 different ways to bring in Avodas Hashem. But mitzad Yaakov Avinu, all these 12 inyanim are kelo in one inyan. Av echad u'kolanu. All the shvatim are betzim one mitzias. Just like we mentioned in the last sikha, that mitzad the tipa that the Av gives, the whole son, the whole ben is nichlal in there in one mitzias, and you can't be mechalik it. And if the second you megala that shadish, how they're all betzim one, so every single shevet tak mitzad his inyan, he tak is kela all the other minus. Mitzad every shevet, the way he has bechinas av echad l'kolan, the way he has the bechinas his shadish, the way his father looks at him, he's not an inyan prati. He's kela all the other shvatim. He's in the av, they were all nichlal zeh b'zeh. And that was the chiddush of Yaakov's bracha. The chiddush of Yaakov's bracha was that he didn't only the shvatim didn't only get to be magala the shadish prati, to magala how Yehuda has his inyan and Yisachar has his inyan, But Yaakov gave over to the Shvatim the way they mushash in Yaakov. And mitzad the way they mushash in Yaakov, they're all betzem one nekuda. So those are three in Yodim how the Shvatim are mashpiying each other. One of them mashpiyah the milas to each other. The second way they're mashpiying each other is that they give over their inyan, that the other person, the other shevet should feel that it's Taka is inyan, that Yisachar has Zvulun and Zvulun Taka has Yisachar. It's as if Yisachar learned, it's as if Zvulun learned. And the third inyan is that Batsim, it's at the Shreinish Taka one. And that for each shevet doesn't even need the other shevet, doesn't need the other shvatim to magal the inyanim. Each shevet has in his aveda, Batsim is kelo all the other shvatim. And the chiddush of the Sikha, the Rebbe brings out a merit of the Kinyan of Hashem. That these three Efanim are three ways Yidden are mashpiyah in each other in Avodas Hashem. So we know that the 12 Shvatim bring out 12 different levels in 12 different concepts in serving the Eibishter. And the famous ones is Yisachar and Zvulun. That Yisachar is there to bring in the Inyan of Limud HaTorah, and Zvulun is there to bring out the Inyan of Kiyum Mitzvahs. Now we know that Yisachar made a deal with Zvulun, that Zvulun is going to pay Yisachar's bills, and Yisachar is going to learn Torah for him. So there's three different Efanim how Yisachar affects Zvulun and how Zvulun affects Yisachar. The first Eifin is that through Zvulun giving money to Yisachar, through Zvulun paying Yisachar's bills, he had a chelik, he had a part in Yisachar's Aveda. And since he had the chelik and part in Yisachar's Aveda, it's part of his Aveda too. But that's all that Yisachar was learning how to learn. And Yisachar, through his sitting and learning, was paid by Zvulun, so the part of the Yisachar's learning, a small part of Yisachar's learning came from Zvulun. So if you could say Yisachar gave over the some milas of learning to Zvulun because of his part. So that's one eifin. There's another eifin which is more than that. The Yisachar doesn't only give the schus of his learning to Zvulun. Yisachar convinces his me'ered, the job of Yisachar isn't only to learn on behalf of Zvulun, but it's also to convince Zvulun that he himself should learn. That the person who's learning in yeshiva, which is Yisachar, he convinces Zvulun that Zvulun should also start learning Torah. That in Zvulun should not only have the mila of the Torah, but Zvulun himself should start learning Torah. So Enecham, he comes from the Maila of Yisachar, that Yisachar's in his limud Torah, and therefore he's pushing for it, and he's convincing Zvulun that Zvulun should learn Torah. But at the end of the day, Zvulun is the one who's learning Torah. He's getting it from the inspiration of Yisachar, but Zvulun is the one who's actually learning Torah mitzad his inyan. So these are two efanim that Yisachar affects Zvulun. One is that the effect of Yisachar's learning goes to Zvulun. The second is that Yisachar convinces that Zvulun himself should learn. Now these two Efanim, even though they're a connection between Yisachar and Zvulun, and that Zvulun is having a partnership with Yisachar, on the other hand, they're both coming. The fact that Zvulun is learning, or the fact that Zvulun has anything to do with learning, comes from Yisachar. It comes from that Yisachar is inspiring him to learn. And therefore, Zvulun is going to learn on his terms. Zvulun is not going to learn like Yisachar learns. The job of Yisachar is to inspire, to affect Zvulun, that he should also, together with being Zvulun, together with being someone who his Avodas Hashem is in business, together with that, he should also make a kviyas and learn Torah. But that's all Yisachar inspiring Zvulun, that Zvulun should learn Torah according to his Efanim. Meaning that Zvulun should also learn Torah as a Davanesav unto who he is. Zvulun's job is to be a Baal Esek. A Baal Esek has a certain amount of time, he's not able to learn the way a Yoshev Hale is able to learn. And therefore Yisachar convinces Zvulun that even though you can't learn the whole day, but learn a little bit. So Yisachar mashpiyah on Zvulun. There's a third eifin that Yisachar isn't mashpiyah on Zvulun. The third eifin that we mentioned before, that all Shvat and Batzim, part of their inyan, have all the other milas too. So when Zvulun doesn't have to learn Torah because Yisachar convinces him to learn Torah. Zvulun learns Torah because he has the inyan inside of hhim, which is shaykhah in Torah. The Baal Esek, mitzad atzmei, his inyan is not only to be a Baal Esek, but part of being a true Baal Esek is that he also learns Torah. And that affects how Zvulun's Torah looks like. If Zvulun is only learning Torah because Yisachar convinced him to learn, so Zvulun is going to learn Torah however much he has to. Not because his inyan is to learn in Torah, but because Yisachar convinced him. But if Zvulun is learning Torah because his inyan is to learn in Torah, so Zvulun is not going to learn Torah only however much he has to. So he's not limited in time because he has the job, so he can't learn Torah like Yisachar. But the eichus, the quality of his learning, he's not learning the quality, a watered down version of Limud Torah that a businessman is learning. And it's Batzim Yisachar. So he's learning the Torah the way, in that hour that he learns, he's learning Torah the same way Yisachar would have learned Torah. And so to the other way around. Yisachar has to have to do with Elam to make a dir b'tachtenim. Not only because he's connected to Zvulun, not only he made a partnership with Zvulun, because part of it, the inyan of Limud Torah, part of who Yisachar is, he also has to do with Velt. He also has to make a dir b'tachtenim. He also has to give tzedakah. Now this inyan comes from that not only the shvatim affect each other, but each shevet batzim is kol all the other shvatim. And like we see this in Halacha, the Yerushalmi brings down that Rashbi, who was Teirasim Naseh, so batzim is pater from mitzvahs. He was Teirasim Naseh, but the Yerushalmi says that the Rashbi holds that he was mafsik his Torah. He holds the mafsik his Torah to make a lulav and to make a sukkah. Now, making a lulav, making a sukkah is a hechsher mitzvah. The mitzvah is to shake the lulav, and the mitzvah is to sit in the sukkah. Making a lulav and making a sukkah, that's a hechsher mitzvah. So why does Rashbi hold they have to stop Torah even for hechsher mitzvah? Because that which Talmid Chacham, that which Rashbi had to do mitzvahs, wasn't only because part of being the shleimus of Talmid Chacham, you also have to do mitzvahs. Because so Mele, he stops for a sukkah and he stops for a lulav. That's the mitzvah itself. But if he's doing only mitzvahs because it's extra, so why do you have to stop for hechsher mitzvah? Elamai, the Rashbi stopped for the hechsher mitzvah because the hechsher mitzvah, doing mitzvahs is part of Rashbi is kelol in Yonim mitzvahs too. Rashbi is kelol the Aveda of Zvulun. Rashbi is kelol the concept that even though his inyan is terasum rasei, but by Yid there's no such thing as having one inyan. By Yid, all this inyanim are kelol zebazeh. And therefore Rashbi, part of learning Torah is kelol the inyan of mitzvah. So therefore Rashbi was stopped even for hechsher mitzvah. Mitzad there's a chshivus of mitzvah mitzad atzma. Not only as a shleimus or that he gets from someone else. So what comes from the Sikha is not that which Yidden are the Shvatim when Yidden were Mushish in their Shedesh affects the Yid's Aveda B'Peil. That when a Yid does an Aveda, according to the third Eifen, even though a Yid has, as in general, has his Pratzdik Aveda, but that's all B'chitzenis, if we could say. Your previous a Yid, his Aveda is Keil Zebazeh. A Yid is shaykh to all the Avedas. Not Bizman, because in his time he's taka busy. He's taka inyan of Yisachar, he's taka inyan of Zvun. But when he does connect to another Aveda, it's a Zayin Aveda, it's his Aveda, it's not someone else's. He's not getting a hashpah from another shevet. When the Ba'isek learns Torah, it's his inyan. He's supposed to learn Torah like the Yisachar. He's supposed to learn Torah in Echos like in Yeshiva. He's supposed to learn Be'iyun, v'chulu. Not only something that he's doing as a Baal Isik, because by Yid, Ba'atzim all Avedas Akel Zabazeh. So this is 4 sichas on the concept of Achdus Yisroel Mitzad Shedesh. And the next year, we're going to focus on the third chilik of Achdus, the Eschalkos, that the differentiations in Yidden, the Eschalkos in Yidden of Cain, Levi, Yisrael, etc., aren't only not a stira to Achdus, but they will make the Achdus by Yidden. Now, the Achdus of Yidden is defined dafka by Eschalkos.